Welcome to Scaling Legends. Usually when we talk about the construction industry, there's this underlying expectation of absolute precision.
Right, like it's pure engineering.
Exactly. We treat it like pure engineering. You pour the foundation, it cures at a specific rate, you measure twice, cut once, you follow the blueprints, and the building goes up exactly as planned. I'm Justine, and today we are doing a deep dive into the one variable that completely shatters that illusion of control.
And I'm Nicole.
Yeah.
And that variable, of course, is the weather.
Yeah.
It is the single largest external factor on any job site, and yet it's historically been treated as this unavoidable chaotic force.
Right, like an act of God.
Exactly. We pretend construction is a controlled environment until you look up at the sky and suddenly that precision just completely evaporates.
It really does. We step into the world of weather risk, and we're looking at a landscape that is fundamentally unpredictable. The reality for most of you listening right now, whether you are a construction business owner or a project manager or an estimator, is that your biggest variable is currently being managed by superintendents just looking out the window and hoping it doesn't rain.
Or maybe checking a standard smartphone app.
Right. But hope is not a strategy.
It definitely isn't. And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are taking a stack of sources today, primarily anchored by Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report, to outline a clear blueprint.
A blueprint for what exactly?
Well, we want to look at how the most sophisticated contractors are taking weather, which is traditionally this massive $500 billion liability, and turning it into a sharp, calculated competitive advantage when bidding and scaling.
I love that. Let's anchor this with the hard numbers right out of the gate because, honestly, the scope of the problem is just staggering.
It really is.
According to Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report, weather currently affects 45% of all construction projects globally.
Almost half.
Almost half of everything being built is taking a hit.
Wow.
But it's the fallout that really caught my attention. When a project is hit by weather delays, it adds a massive 25.7% increase to project durations.
Wow.
And a 23.8% increase to costs.
Which is entirely margin crushing. I mean, you bid a job expecting a standard 10 to 12% profit margin, right? If your costs jump nearly 24% because of unmitigated rain and wind delays, you are instantly underwater.
Oh, instantly.
And the stakes are escalating. This isn't just about a rainy afternoon anymore. If you look at heat-related losses alone across the industry, it hit $100 billion in 2020.
$100 billion.
Yeah, and predictive models project that to reach $500 billion by 2050.
That brings up an interesting contradiction, Nicole. We have a $500 billion problem, yet the way we currently track it seems almost archaic. Oh, completely.
You have a superintendent running a $50 million high-rise build, making highly consequential scheduling decisions based on the same weather app I use to decide if I need a light jacket.
Right. It makes no sense.
It's like trying to day trade the stock market using last week's newspaper. A standard weather app pulls data from regional radar and predictive models for a broad geographic grid.
Usually an airport that might be like 12 miles away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is not accounting for the actual microclimate of a dense urban job site. Okay, so let's unpack this. If standard forecasts aren't enough, what should contractors actually be putting on their sites?
Well, that is the crucial disconnect, Justine. The physics of weather on a job site are hyper-specific.
So,
think about the wind shear at the top of a 400-foot tower crane. It behaves according to fluid dynamics that are completely different from the wind at street level.
right, that makes sense.
A regional forecast simply lacks the resolution to tell you if it's safe to lift a load of steel at that specific elevation. So if standard regional forecasts are fundamentally inadequate for a modern build, the logical step is that contractors need to generate their own telemetry.
Exactly.
They need to move from regional guessing to hyperlocal knowing. But, I imagine installing meteorological equipment on a temporary job site sounds like a logistical headache for a project manager.
It used to be, but the hardware has gone through a massive evolution. Smart contractors are now deploying dedicated on-site weather stations, and the cost barrier is incredibly low.
Really? How low?
Typically between $500 to $2,000.
Oh, wow. In the context of a multi-million-dollar project, that is practically a rounding error.
Exactly. And we are talking about fragile scientific equipment. These are solid-state, ruggedized nodes with ultrasonic anemometers.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning they have no moving parts. so they don't freeze up or jam with job site dust.
So they just mount these directly to the job trailer or the apex of the crane itself, and that gives them the exact wind speed, humidity, and barometric pressure at the exact elevation of the work. But raw data on a sensor doesn't actually solve the problem unless it's integrated into the workflow, right?
Right, it has to be usable.
From what I read in the research, the real power comes from API integrations into specialized software platforms like WeatherBuild or Tomorrow.io.
Precisely, Justine. The hardware acts as the edge node, but the software processes the reality. And the hardware can get incredibly specialized depending on the build.
Like what?
Take lightning detection. Instead of a foreman waiting to hear thunder and making a subjective call to clear the roof, these sites use triangulation sensors.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, they detect the electromagnetic signature of a strike miles away. It provides an absolute quantified metric of when it is unsafe and exactly when it is safe to return.
That makes perfect sense for immediate safety protocols, but knowing when to send the crew home is inherently reactive. So what does this all mean?
What do you mean?
Well, we have this fancy $2,000 weather station spinning on the job trailer, which is great for the day-to-day. But how does that actually protect the timeline and the budget? How does hyperlocal data translate into proactive project management?
Okay. It translates through predictive critical path analysis.
Okay, break that down for me.
Smart contractors take this hyperlocal data, both the historical patterns of that specific microclimate and the predictive modeling, and they use it to proactively build weather days into their schedule buffers, usually about 1 to 2 days per month.
But the mechanism of how they do this is important, right? It isn't just arbitrarily scattering an extra 5 days at the end of the Gantt chart.
Right, because not all tasks are weather sensitive. You can run interior electrical conduit in a torrential downpour.
Sure.
But you absolutely cannot pour a massive exterior concrete foundation if the humidity and precipitation levels are wrong. The schedule has to be sequenced logically.
Exactly. You isolate the critical path, the specific sequence of dependent tasks that dictate the final completion date.
Right. And then you apply seasonal planning by running Monte Carlo simulations against the historical weather data.
E-Carlo simulations, that sounds intense.
It's just a statistical model. The software effectively runs thousands of project simulations to find the highest probability of favorable weather windows, and you align your exterior critical path tasks with those windows.
But even the best probabilistic models can't prevent a storm front from arriving a week early.
True.
If the dashboard shows a massive low-pressure system moving in next Thursday, and you have a highly sensitive pour scheduled, the data gives you the lead time to execute an acceleration plan.
Exactly. You don't wait until Thursday to react.
Right. You authorize double shifts or targeted overtime on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to beat the weather front. You use the data to dictate the work rather than letting the weather dictate the work.
And that operational shift is profound. And what's fascinating here is the actual friction on a job site rarely happens on a sunny day when everyone is working ahead of schedule.
No, of course not.
The friction happens when the storm does hit, the site shuts down, and the general contractor or the owner gets the bill for the delay. This is where the paradigm completely shifts.
Also,
the primary value of that hyperlocal weather station isn't just operational, it is contractual armor.
Oh, I want to dig into this, because traditional construction contracts are notoriously messy when it comes to weather.
Messy is an understatement.
For decades, the industry has leaned on force majeure clauses, the classic act of God provisions. The fine print usually relies on phrasing like, in the event of unusually severe weather, the contractor is entitled to a schedule extension.
Right.
But unusually severe is a completely subjective phrase.
It is entirely subjective, which is why it inevitably leads to mediation or litigation. The contractor claims the storm was unusually severe and demands an extra week and the associated overhead costs.
Right, and then the project owner pulls up a regional weather app, argues it was just a standard Tuesday thunderstorm, and suddenly you have two teams of lawyers arguing over puddles.
Exactly. The smartest contractors are stripping that vague language out of their contracts entirely.
They are replacing subjective adjectives with Boolean logic. If X, then Y. If we have hyper-accurate data from the crane, that totally changes the legal definition of a delay.
Yes. They are defining specific objective triggers based directly on the telemetry from their on-site stations.
Give me an example.
So instead of an unusually severe rain, the contract explicitly states an excusable weather delay is triggered if sustained wind speeds exceed 40 miles per hour for more than 30 consecutive minutes during operating hours.
Wow.
Or if localized rainfall exceeds 1.5 inches within a 4-hour window. What's fascinating here is that setting these objective triggers entirely removes the emotion and arguing from weather delay claims.
It really does. It fundamentally changes the dynamic between the contractor and the owner. When you file a delay claim, you aren't writing a subjective narrative pleading for extra time.
No, not at all.
You are exporting a data log from the site node that acts as an impartial third-party witness. It says, at 2 p.m., the wind hit 42 miles per hour. Per Section 4 of the contract, this is an excusable delay. There is nothing to argue about.
It turns a subjective negotiation into an objective fact.
But, Nicole, let me pose a scenario where even the tightest contract and the best critical path analysis fall short. Let's say a freak deep freeze hits Texas, bursting temporary piping and destroying materials across the site.
Okay, yeah.
The contract protects your timeline so you don't pay liquidated damages to the owner, but you still have massive physical damage and idle equipment costs. You still need a financial safety net.
Yeah.
Traditionally, that has been indemnity insurance, but with global insurance availability down 42%, contractors need a better safety net.
It is borderline a crisis. Traditional carriers are pulling back entirely, raising premiums to unsustainable levels, or outright refusing to write policies for certain regions.
Because the climate volatility is breaking their traditional risk models.
Exactly. That creates a massive exposure gap if you are bidding a multi-year infrastructure project. And according to Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report, this shrinkage in traditional coverage is precisely why proactive weather management is shifting from a best practice to a survival requirement.
Right. If indemnity insurance is failing, contractors need an alternative mechanism to transfer that risk.
And that brings us to parametric insurance. It is arguably the most significant financial innovation in the construction sector right now.
Okay, explain how it works.
Well, traditional indemnity insurance is a long, arduous process. You suffer a loss, you file a claim, the carrier sends an adjuster weeks later to visually inspect the damage, they calculate depreciation, you haggle over the cash value, and maybe, eventually, you get a settlement check.
It's a system built on friction.
Yeah.
The underlying mechanism of parametric insurance completely bypasses that friction, right?
Yes.
From what I understand, it doesn't ensure the physical damage at all. It ensures the occurrence of the weather event itself. It functions almost like a smart contract.
That is the exact mechanism. You work with specialized carriers like Descartes, Swiss Re, Zurich, or Aon. It costs about 2 to 5% of coverage. And you define a highly specific parameter similar to the objective triggers in the construction contract.
Like what?
The parameter might be temperatures drop below 20 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 consecutive days, or wind speeds hit 60 miles per hour at this exact latitude and longitude.
And the data feeding that parameter is verified by an independent third-party meteorological source, or potentially the calibrated on-site weather station itself.
Look.
If the data hits that threshold, the policy triggers automatically.
Exactly.
But there's where it gets really interesting. If the policy pays out regardless of actual physical damage, what happens if the wind hits 60 miles per hour, but by some miracle, nothing on your site breaks?
That is a concept called basis risk, the potential gap between the payout and the actual damage. If the parameter is met and you have no physical damage, you still receive the payout.
Wow. Wait, really?
Yeah. But conversely, if the wind hits 59 miles per hour and destroys your scaffolding, the parametric policy pays nothing because the parameter wasn't triggered.
Which means it isn't meant to completely replace traditional indemnity insurance, but rather to complement it. It covers the economic impact of the delay itself.
Right. But the revolutionary aspect is the speed of liquidity. Because there is no human claims adjuster required and no physical damage to visually verify, the transaction is purely algorithmic.
And how fast are we talking?
The typical payout time for a parametric policy is just 2 weeks.
A 14-day turnaround changes everything. If a hurricane shuts down a coastal build, you aren't bleeding cash for 6 months waiting on an adjuster. You receive a cash infusion in 2 events.
It acts as a rapid liquidity bridge,
ensuring you can keep the business solvent, retain your specialized crews, and remobilize the absolute second the site is safe.
It acknowledges a fundamental truth of construction. The most expensive casualty of a weather event isn't broken drywall, it is lost time. Parametric insurance effectively insures the time.
Okay, the logical progression here is clear. We deploy hyperlocal hardware, We feed that data into predictive schedules, we rewrite our contracts using objective Boolean triggers, and we backstop the whole operation with parametric insurance.
It's a bulletproof strategy.
It is, but implementing it creates a massive operational bottleneck. Tracking 40 miles per hour wind gusts, updating daily logs, adjusting the critical path, and digging through specs for force majeure clauses. I mean, that sounds like an administrative nightmare for project managers.
Oh, it is a heavy administrative burden. Project managers are often already stretched thin, working 60-hour weeks. Asking them to become amateur meteorologists and contract analysts is the exact friction point where most construction firms abandon this strategy.
Right. They recognize the value of the data, but their operational bandwidth simply cannot handle the processing load. Which means to actually scale this strategy, we have to automate the administration of the data.
Exactly. And that is where the artificial intelligence layer becomes mandatory.
Yeah.
The platform we've been referencing today, Smart Business Automator, is built specifically to handle this exact friction for construction companies trying to scale.
Okay, let's break down the features. How does AI actually achieve this, starting with the contract analysis?
Let's look at document intelligence. Traditional search functions rely on exact keyword matches. If a project manager needs to find the weather delay protocols in a 500-page contract, hitting Control F for the word rain might yield 200 irrelevant results.
Because it lacks context.
Right. But an AI platform utilizes natural language processing. It maps the semantic meaning of the text, so a team can simply type a conversational query. What are the specific wind delay triggers for the downtown high-rise project?
And it just finds it.
Instantly. The AI understands the context and extracts the exact objective clause, citing the specific page and section without digging through folders.
That effectively eliminates hours of administrative digging. But what about the daily documentation? In construction law, if a weather delay isn't thoroughly documented in the daily log on the exact day it occurs, it essentially never happened, as far as the owner is concerned.
That is where Smart Business Automator handles automated daily logs. Instead of superintendent manually typing out weather metrics, the system automatically pulls the raw telemetry directly from the on-site hardware.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it synthesizes that data with the superintendent's field notes and turns long field reports into clear summaries with action items.
That creates an airtight paper trail for future claims. But the most impressive capability we saw in the research is the risk and schedule detection. How does the predictive modeling handle this dynamically?
The AI runs continuous automated simulations. It ingests the real-time forecast and cross-references it against the schedule. It acts as an early warning system to identify weather-related bottlenecks before they become critical delays.
So it doesn't just tell you it will rain on Friday.
No, it calculates that based on your current production rate, you will not have the roof sealed by Friday, which will subsequently delay the drywall installation scheduled for Monday. It sees around the corners of a complex project.
And when a delay inevitably does occur, the resulting paperwork is staggering. A weather event triggers a mountain of RFIs and change orders.
And the AI handles that heavy lifting too. If a weather delay happens, the AI generates draft RFI responses using historical context and evaluates how the change order impacts timeline and budget.
So the project manager is elevated from a data entry clerk to an executive decision maker. They review the AI's analysis, approve the strategy, and communicate clearly with the stakeholders. That is the definition of scaling an operation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, having objective weather data and automated admin isn't just a defense mechanism, it's an offensive strategy.
I think that is the most crucial takeaway.
It positions you as the most reliable, transparent contractor in the room, allowing you to win better bids and command higher margins.
Which brings up a fascinating secondary implication. If you are deploying these highly calibrated meteorological sensors across dozens of major urban construction sites, you are quietly building a proprietary network of microclimate data.
That is a brilliant point. The data itself becomes an asset.
Exactly. Municipalities and climate researchers are desperate for granular wind and heat data within dense city grids. In the future, contractors might not just use this data to protect their own builds. They could monetize and sell their hyperlocal telemetry back to the city. The weather goes from being a liability to a protective shield to an actual secondary revenue stream.
That is the ultimate paradigm shift. Will you be the contractor who dictates the terms of the environment, or the one left sweeping up the pieces and arguing with an insurance adjuster?
Something to seriously consider the next time you look out that job site window. To everyone listening, if you know a contractor who is dealing with unpredictable weather delays and losing margin, send them this episode. It could completely change how they write their contracts and bid their next job. Hit follow on whatever app you're listening on so you don't miss tomorrow's intel. And make sure to visit smartbusinessautomator.com to learn more about scaling without the admin overload. Until next time.